Draft resolutions that are before a given committee, again, I'll refer to the second committee just for sake of clarity, are looked at by delegations in a more informal setting than that constitutes the official meeting of the committee. These are referred to as informal consultations. These are meetings that are convened by a so-called facilitator who is an actual delegate from a given country, selected by the bureau member responsible for that agenda item. These informal consultations will start with the member states looking at the draft resolution that has been issued thus far on that subject matter. Let us say, hypothetically, on financing for development. So there's a draft resolution that was submitted by a member state or by a group of member states on this issue, and it forms the basis for these initial negotiating processes. The second committee strives to agree to everything that is before it. If though, after several rounds of informal consultations on this text, which involve line by line reading of the text, which involve suggestions and give and take between delegations and groups of delegations, alternative language being proposed to replace given paragraphs, alternative phrases, alternative words, striking out, changing, agreeing. If at the end of all of this there is a semblance of a solid text, but still there might be an element in this text where, despite all the efforts of the facilitator and the member states represented, no advance is made. And the chair of the committee is also tapped to help out, as are the bureau members. And still, this doesn't resolve itself. This might mean that the text as a whole could be voted upon, which again, for the second committee, member states will do, generally speaking, everything they can to prevent that, simply because it is extremely important for them as member states to have a united voice and a united front on economic and social development issues. So either the text as a whole could be voted on, and that is a straightforward recorded vote, which would of course it would be necessary for someone to request a vote. A text does not simply get voted upon unless somebody asks for a vote. So politically speaking, a delegation would need to ask that this be voted on, which sometimes can pose a challenge. At other times, there might also be a situation where a given part of the text is the core of all the difficulties. And a given delegation or group of delegations might therefore table, in advance of any action, so that it is well known what is being done, an additional language, which would then constitute what could be an amendment to this resolution. In those instances, there are rules in the rules of procedure of the General Assembly that are very clear, that indicate the sequence in which a committee will be invited to take action on a resolution that has amendments. Namely, that the amendment, or if there's more than one, each amendment individually will be acted upon before the text of the entire resolution is put before the committee for action, be it adoption without a vote or be it by a vote. And if there is more than one amendment, the order in which the amendment has been submitted and received by the Secretariat will be critical. That is to say, the amendment that was submitted first will be acted upon before the one that was submitted second. And in certain main committees of the General Assembly, depending on the subject matter, one amendment will be likely diametrically opposed in meaning to the other. And an amendment, it's clear in the rules of procedure that it is not a slight change to language, which is what the informals and formals do. polishing language, negating language, fighting over language, whatever it is that delegates do. An amendment does involve a change in the meaning of that paragraph or in the meaning of that message, not a slight modification. That constitutes something very different. If, for example, and these instances do apply, we get to the day when the committee is acting on a resolution on a given issue. Again, for argument's sake, let's say financing for development. Everybody agreed to the text, so it's a text that we all anticipate will be adopted without a problem. No vote, by consensus. We might, though, find ourselves in a situation where the languages, and there are 6 official languages at the UN in which the document has to have been issued prior to action. A document has to be out 24 hours before it is acted upon in all languages. Or delegations may ask for more time to take action on something. This is what we informally talk about as the 24-hour rule. If in one of these languages, for example, there are editorial mistakes, or perhaps mistakes that are more significant, mistakes that change the meaning from the original language in which the informals and formals were conducted, then in those instances, either the Secretariat that same morning, a few minutes before the meeting starts, will be approached, or maybe the day before, depending on when the document was issued in these languages, by a given delegation saying, we will ask for the floor and we will indicate that there are some corrections that are required. Or perhaps the facilitator himself or herself will indicate, I have seen that there are some errors, I will ask to be given the floor and I will mention what the changes are. In those cases, this will be done. The committee, therefore, in the formal meeting will hear what the corrections might be, whether it's a footnote, whether it's an entire phrase, whether something fell between the cracks and editorially speaking or linguistically something may have been lost in translation, pardon the pun. Then the committee will be invited to adopt that text as orally corrected, which would imply that the corrections indicated, to which no one objected, will be taken on board by the Secretariat, and that corrected text is the one that will prevail. And again, it's a distinction to be made from a formal amendment, which would actually change the meaning of a text before